Hey everyone, so in this video we're going to look at the trim tool and nudge as well as work with fades. So fade ins and fade outs and crossfades, and a tiny little bit about the undo cue as well. Alright, let's get started. Okay, so let's do a little quick review of how the trim tool works. The trim tool cuts unwanted audio off the end of a clip. So maybe you have a little bit of shuffling around before the actual playing starts, maybe a chair gets moved around. Let's see. Yeah, you can hear a little breath, a little movement at the beginning of this track that we might want to remove so that it starts right with the music and we don't have any extra kind of audible sounds. So you can use trim for that. It will know which side of the track you're on. So it will be this type of bracket to cut off the left side, and it will look like that reversed to cut off the right side. Once you're past the midpoint of the clip, it will automatically pick the closer edge, right? So if I'm past the midpoint on the left, it's going to pick the left edge to cut off. If I'm on the right, it will pick the right edge. And if you want to reverse that, hold down Option. So that's that. So I'm going to try it. Here I go. Click and drag. And I'm on the grid right now, but you might want to be in slip for trimming. So it goes right to the edge of that audio maybe, and then you put a fade on it. And now there's no extraneous noise before that first note. And then we can do the other end if we want to. So I can zoom in on the right side maybe of this edit here. And there's already a fade there, but maybe there was some extra audio that was making noise or a sneeze or whatever. You can trim the right side to what you want. And then say that you want just a little bit of audio left over. So instead of trimming off the sides, maybe I just want everything trimmed off except for this audio. So that command is called trim clip. And what that is you can go edit and then trim clip and then to selection. And that will trim everything except what you've selected. So you select what you want to keep, and then it will trim off everything that's what you've deemed unnecessary, right? And that's also Command T to do that with a shortcut. So that's kind of nice, kind of does some trimming for you on both ends in that case. All right, so let's have a look at nudge now. Maybe I have a little bit of audio that I just want to move over in the tiniest little increment to the right or to the left. Maybe it's just a little early or just a little late. Like maybe this is a group right now. Let me turn that group off. Okay, so here's a hit right here, right? A clap. That's just slightly early, right? Well, I might just want to nudge that over so I can make a selection. And then I can nudge a couple of different ways. The main one probably is the numeric keypad. You can use plus and minus to nudge over by whatever your nudge amount is, your nudge value. And that works just like grid does. So I can pull this drop down, maybe pick bars and beats for this case here, but you might want minutes and seconds or something else. Often you want to nudge right onto a specific frame of a film or an ad or something. So so nudge is really useful for that kind of situation. I'm just going to do 30-second notes. And then, so I've set my nudge value to 30 seconds. And then I can hit plus or minus. And look at that, 30-second over. Got it right onto the beat for me. So that's kind of a useful feature. If you have a laptop, you don't have a numeric keypad usually. So the other way, one other way you can do it is hold down Control and then comma and period, which is also the greater than and less than signs. That will also nudge for you. So Control and then greater than, less than will nudge over whatever value you've set. And I set it just a moment ago at 30 seconds, I believe. Right? So Control and then greater than, less than, or comma and period. Those should be the same keys. Cool. All right. You can also take a selection and nudge the selection without moving the underlying audio. So maybe I selected like this, and I want to get the front of that selection right onto those notes, or just adjust a little bit, nudge a little bit onto a frame or something. I can do that by holding Shift and then using plus and minus. So that will shift the selection without moving the underlying audio. So that's kind of a cool trick too, just letting you adjust your selection a little bit that way. All right, let's see how to do some fades. So to do a fade out, it's very simple. All you have to do is make a selection across the end of a clip. So say that I had trimmed this and now I just want this last little bit to fade out. I have to select on the clip and then pass the boundary of the clip into silence. And it will know whether to fade out or fade in depending on which direction I'm going, right? So this is clearly a fade out because I'm going off the edge of the clip. So I hit Command F or Edit, Fades, and then Create, which is also, again, Command F, which you're going to want to know that one. You create fades so often, it's so useful. Just learn the shortcut. It's so helpful. So Command F will always bring you up a dialog box where you can choose a series of different shapes for your fade. You can also audition what the fade is going to sound like by clicking on the little speaker icon. It will start a little ahead of the fade, and then you'll see a playback line kind of go by here. So watch. And there it was. And you hardly heard it because it's such a short fade. And then you can hit OK, and that will apply the fade. You can also use the trim tool to adjust the length of the fade, or even just the length of the clip with the fade incorporated, right? So you can adjust fades that way. There's more ways to do it. You can also double click them to bring up that fade out dialog box again, and maybe change some of the fade curves or whatever you want to do. Often I find that once I get everything going, I just hit Command F, and then the dialog comes up, but I don't even look at it. I just hit return as soon as that comes up, and the fade's done. And usually whatever basic setting I have there works. For a fade in, we come to the front of a clip, and I'll get rid of this one, and then here we go. So maybe trim off a little beginning of that track, and then highlight across into silence, Command V, dialog comes up, OK. Finally, when you're doing edits, it's often really important to crossfade your edits. Often, you will have to take two separate clips and put them together from two different takes. So when we do that, what will very frequently happen is right at the point where they cross, you'll get a little click or a pop. So in order to get rid of that, you need to apply a crossfade. A crossfade is made the same way you make regular fades. You just select across the boundary of both clip edges. So like that, and they're touching, of course, and then Command F, and then the crossfade dialog will come up, and you can audition it if you want to. You can change the curve for either side. So when a crossfade happens, this track on the left is faded out, and this one on the right is faded in, and right now equally, right? As you can see, equal power. Usually crossfades can be a pretty small amount of time because you just need a quick little fade in, fade out of the two edges, and what they do is end up overlapping a little bit. So the other thing you should know about applying a crossfade is you need both tracks to extend. Their parent file needs to extend a little bit past where you're doing the crossfade so that there's actually room. This track needs to exist underneath here, the parent of that track, and this track needs to exist a little bit past this boundary as well so that you can smoothly fade out and fade in the two tracks on top of each other. So if there's not any parent audio underneath one of these, you'll get an error window asking you to either adjust the fades or skip them. Okay, finally, undos. So Pro Tools allows you to undo up to 64 times. And that does take some computer memory. So if you're finding you're having RAM issues, you can change that setting in Setup, and then where is it? Preferences. So Setup, Preferences, and then you go to the Editing tab, and the level of undos is right there at the bottom. The max is 64. So you can pick anywhere between 1 and 64. For me, I always just leave it at 64. And then you can undo or redo. The key to do it is you can either do edit and then undo, or redo if there's a possibility for it. And it will always know what the last thing you did was. So I just trimmed a clip, so it'll say undo trim clip. But if I just separated that clip, now it'll say undo separate at selection. So it knows what your last thing was. And then if I undo that, I can also redo what I've just undone. So redo separated selection can also happen now. And to do that with shortcut keys, which you definitely want to know, it's Command Z and Shift Command Z, which is very much like any other computer program you use these days, right? So undos are a very common thing. Finally, you also have a window that shows you all 64 or however many up to 64 you've gotten to. And that is in Window Undo History. And that will bring you up a little window, and you will have two different kinds. There we go. So these are my undo history, and they show up in order, right? So the last thing I did was trim the clip. And then in italics, they have your redo items as well. So this is the redo, and these are the undo list. So I can go back in time. There's all my nudges. So you can go back in time and move to any point in that undo history. So there are a couple other ways to undo mistakes or things that you want to change. One thing first is undos do not include selection. So if I made a selection and then I really spent a lot of time like getting the edit selection just perfect, and I spent all this time getting it, and then I accidentally click over here, I can't undo that, but I can restore last selection from the edit menu. So that's a nice thing. But if you click literally anything else, you will lose that. So as soon as you make your mistake, oh, whoops, you got to make sure that the next thing you do is restore the selection to get it back. Otherwise, the very next thing you click on will be the thing that it returns to. So say that I made my selection, clicked over here, then clicked one more time. It's gonna, if I do restore last selection, it's gonna go back to that spot that I clicked previously. So whatever your last thing that you had done, it's gonna go back to for selections. Okay, say that you made a whole bunch of changes, finally gave up that day, decided that you really just wanted to go back and forget all of those new ideas and just go back to something else to start from, where you started from that day. You can go File and Revert to Saved. So that's another way to go back in time in your session, a version of an undo, I guess we could think. So you can go Revert to Saved, and it will revert your session to whatever the most recently saved version was. I hit save a lot, so that doesn't do me a whole lot of good, because often it'll just be a minute ago that I saved last. But if you don't save very often, then that may get you out of trouble. And then finally, there's another place you can do it. So you can actually go back to your auto saves. So that is File and then Open Session. And then you need to pick, it may or may not have your current session in the window. And then you're going to go to Session File Backups. And you will see, so for instance, on my machine, every 5 minutes has an autosave. So then all you have to do is go back to a time when you know everything was okay, and you hit open. So I'm going to go back to 9:27 a.m. today, hit open, and it's going to be like, do you want to save the current session? That's up to you. And then what you'll get is your project name plus .recovered. So in order to make this your new working version, if you decide that this is the right one to do, you also want to do a file save as, and then save it as your original project name if you want that to be your new working version. So in order to get that .recovered away from the session name. And that's about it. So lots of ways to get yourself out of trouble. There are a couple actions that you can do that you should know about that will clear your undo queue. So one is deleting a track. So if you delete a track, it automatically removes your undos. You close a session, you lose your undo queue. You can clear audio from the clip list. So maybe when you're cleaning up or something, that will also clear your undo queue. And then recording in destructive record mode will also do it. So most of those things we don't do very often, and usually our undo queue is happy and safe. But be aware that there are a few things that you can do that will cause that to erase and start from zero. All right, so I think that's it for that one. I'll see you in the next one.